It is May 25th, Memorial Day. Wanted to show you what our farm stand, what we call our farm stand garden, is doing right now. We have corn that's coming up nicely and loving the sun. Then we have hot peppers on this side over here, and then bell peppers on the other side, with some flowers planted down here, some zinnias, so that we've got some pollinators going on. So here we have some zinnias. Here, this row is hots, and this is bell peppers. Then we've got tomatoes that we are going to trellis and grow up to try and keep the fruit producing and not as much foliage. Again, some pollinators going on. We've planted some onions in front of those tomatoes, so you can co-plant onions and tomatoes like that. Then we've got two big troughs of tomatoes that we're stringing. Again, this is our stringing system. A lot of people are not familiar with this, but this is where you take the strings and these clips, and you clip the tomato to the string, and it holds it upright. It lets it move some in the wind so it doesn't stress it out that way, but yet it holds it steady enough not to break it. You keep those tomatoes trimmed up where you have mostly, you can see there where we have a lot of tomatoes growing on this one. If you focus on fruit and not foliage as much, so we trim our foliage back, what we call suckering. So we have just main stems with our tomatoes, and we like growing them there again with our strings. Here we have some zucchini plants that already have some zucchini on them. We've already harvested a few zucchini, but you can see some zucchini coming here. And again, I think this is Coreopsis right here, some pollinating plants. We've got some pollinators planted. We haven't gotten the others planted in here yet, but we'll plant some, probably some eggplant in there. Here we have a tomatillo tomato, and in this case we're doing a cage option with our troughs, so you can see that will contain the foliage. Here we have some squash plants, some yellow squash. You can see this is what we call our farm stand. This is our little storage shed that has been used in the past for selling produce as well. So this garden is our farm stand garden. Here we have, on the left side here, we have spaghetti squash, and on the right is butternut squash. And we have an A-frame built, and it gives it a more stable trellising situation. These butternut and spaghetti squash just grow up the trellis, and believe it or not, those big squashes will hold on. So we already have some squash coming on these plants as well, so we're anxious to see those. Here I have some tomatoes sitting out, trying to harden them off as we're getting ready to do some outside planting. So we have a lot of our tomatoes that we've been selling that we will put in our garden. Then we have cucumbers, doing the same thing with our cucumbers as we do with our tomatoes. In this case, instead of a trellis, we're doing a string situation, and you do the same thing. You want to sucker them down so they only have one or two stalks coming up, and you can just snip those extra branches as they come out. Let me see if we can tell here. You can see where you have your main stem, and then you have this little one coming out the side. This would be like a sucker. It comes out of the crotch of the between the plant and the leaf. And if you pull those extra ones off, then you won't have all the different branches. And when you're trellising, that works fine, but when you're stringing, you want to keep just very few. So we've got different cucumbers here. We have a long cucumber, we have a dragon's egg, which is a white, more round cucumber. Then we have cucumber munchers, which are more your pickling, and the same on the other side. Again, some Coreopsis to get our bees coming, our pollinators. Here we have a trellis set up with tomatoes. You see we had a Roma that was already producing tomatoes in a 4-inch pot that we've set out. We have a pink lady and a striped German also. Here's the striped German, pink lady. And in this case, we're just going to trellis. And as these tomatoes grow up, we will clip them for support instead of staking them. Again, suckering and keeping those not so bushy. These are the potatoes that you saw in our potato video not too long ago with Adeline and I planting in our large trough. Then we have a pepper in our T1. We have a zucchini. Here's another zucchini, and you can see it's blossoming and coming in a T1. We have more spaghetti and butternut squash again with an A-frame, just in a smaller situation. Flowers planted around those for pollination. We've got a couple of cherry tomatoes here with a marigold between. Again, trying to encourage those bees and those pollinators to come back. This is a carrot trough that we have just harvested recently, and we have reseeded, and we're just keeping it covered and trying to keep it moist to help that germination of the seed. Here we have some radishes. This is what we call our tall double, and we've already harvested one batch of radishes this year, but you can see that there are more coming. Pretty little red things in there. So we've got radishes there, we've got pole beans here, so we will put a trellis on this right here on this stand and trellis these beans up. Again, more yellow squash. We've got yellow squash that are coming nice and full, lots of buds and blooms. Here I have some cilantro, peppers in the middle with some, again, marigolds, and something's been nipping my marigolds off, which I didn't think would happen, and clipping off the top of my cucumber. So I've got to find the culprit and take care of that. But we have, again, cucumbers with a little trellis, and this is on our triple right here, and then this is a quad, and this one's not fully planted yet. We have some chives growing from last year. I got a couple pollinator things going in, but otherwise it'll be planted with herbs. So this quad will be an herb garden, which I'll give you a picture of later on. Around the farm stand, to encourage, again, pollinators, I've got flowers planted. Here's a miniature butterfly bush. So just a variety of things. I've got some on the other side too. Across the back, we're going to put one of our new raised bed gardens that has sunflowers and some more pollinators. And of course, at Mimi's garden, we always have to have toys. So here's our sandbox and our wheelbarrow and things for kids to play when they come to play with Mimi at the garden. So this is our farm stand garden. Again, May 25th, 2020. And we'll keep you updated as we move along. Happy gardening.